Hi guys, and welcome to my review of Stranger Things season four. The very thing that we have to blame for all of our Kate Bush radio play. Yeah, and so straight off the bat, the scale of this season is just a whole lot bigger in pretty much every respect. Okay, so we basically got a whole much bigger production value here. We've got a much broader canvas to paint on. We've got a lot of different kind of plot threads going on, which I'll get into briefly. And we're basically at a point now where you can no longer really see or consider Stranger Things as a TV show where these kids are kind of like a centerpiece of that, because they're not kids anymore, but we basically have followed them up into like a post-teens, where they are college kids at the minute. So they've all kind of um, separated a little bit. They've all kind of gone their own little ways. We're basically when we're picking it up, we're basically the Bryars have basically moved, so we basically got 11 after all of the strain and trauma that 11 basically had at the end of season 3. All of that has taken its strain. You could also argue that kind of a mourning of Hopper has all kind of taken its toll on 11. So she's basically left without her powers. So she's struggling to come to terms with all of that. We basically have Mike and Dustin, who have joined this Hellfire Club, which is led by this new guy called Eddie. And this whole club, their overall role in this is to basically, they end up being the main ones to kind of minus Mike, which I'll kind of get into, but the Hellfire Club basically end up forming their own group, and they basically become responsible throughout the season they're basically the main ones to basically be investigating all of the Upside Down and to tackle Vecna, who is back in this season and ends up getting a lot more screen time. We get a lot more backstory into him. We delve a lot deeper. On that note, as our characters have grown up into adulthood, the tone of this show has grown up with it. So we basically have a lot much darker series here, and not just tonally, not just the themes that we're dealing with is a lot more darker, or there's just darker aesthetic. There is some really gnarly stuff in here. This is like by far the goriest one that I've seen. There's some really grisly stuff here. We basically have another plot thread is that we have Hopper returning, and he basically ends up getting captured and held captive in this Russian camp, and so we end up seeing scenes where he is being tortured and all of this stuff. There's some really, really gnarly stuff in here, and this is like without a doubt the most grown up and the most adult focused and the most darkest and gnarliest that we've seen Stranger Things. But with that, we've also got the very influences here have grown up as well. Obviously, we know Stranger Things is a show that has very much had its inspirations and its influences on its sleeve. It hasn't, tried to disguise that in any way. It's all been very open here. And where we kind of like started with a starting point for this show, where we had these kids as the centerpiece. So we had all of these like Steven Spielberg throwbacks here. Here we get a lot more throwbacks to much more adult influences of pop culture 80s. We have a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street throwbacks here. We have a lot of Hellraiser throwbacks here. The very main antagonist of Vecna is very much influenced by Freddy Krueger and Pinhead. The Duffer Brothers have commented on that and admitted that themselves, that they were big inspirations for the design of this character, and also how he just plays on his victims, how he's able to invade the minds of our protagonists in the same way that Freddy Krueger would be able to invade people's dreams. And the whole aesthetic of these scenes where Vecna is preying on these on our protagonists, anyone familiar with the Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser franchise will basically definitely get those vibes in terms of just the execution, in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of just the overall surrealist visuals that we get here. Yeah, so, and we don't even end there. This series basically ups the ante in just the runtime as well, especially in the latter half of this. The season finale of this is 2.5, is just shy of 2.5 hours, where it's like the same runtime as Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. It is like crazy, and the episode preceding is like about an hour and a half. So it's this was all off the back of episode 7, which is, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but episode 7 was just like exhausted. It's so action orientated, yeah, we basically had that, and then we had an hour and a half episode, and we had a 2.5 hour episode. This series gets exhausting, it really does, because there is just so much going on here, and the scale is just so much bigger and so much grander. So we basically essentially we find Eleven, who spends a lot of the time embroiled in Hawkins' lab. We basically go back to that a lot more. We learn a lot more of that kind of backstory about Eleven and all of the other people around her that have these similar kind of capabilities, and the sort of backstory and the mechanics of that, and the whys and wherefores of why all of that has been going on. We delve a lot deeper into that. 11 wants the answers to all of those stuff as well. So she kind of reluctantly goes along with it, at least for some time, to try and find out these answers. Yeah, like I said, Hopper basically spends a large portion of this season imprisoned at this Russian camp. We basically have Joyce and Murray who get whiff of that, so that kind of puts them on their course throughout the season, where they're going out to try and rescue him. Murray, just like in the previous season, that would bring some needed light relief, which is more needed than any in this season, because, like I said, overall the tone is just so much darker and so much maturer, that those moments of light relief, or those characters of light relief in this case, are just much more needed. We basically have the military looking for 11 here, as she's embroiled in the Hawkins lab. We basically find ourselves with our main group of characters essentially splitting, and we have Mike, Will, Jonathan trying to kind of help Eleven, albeit from afar. They are assisted by another new character, Argyle, who is basically just this stoner guy who basically just kind of like drives him around. And he's sort of another character similar to Murray, who's kind of inserted in there to provide those moments of light relief, and he does that really well. Essentially, the rest of our crew here end up kind of forming the kind of Hellfire Club, and they basically become responsible for kind of tackling all the mysteries of the Upside Down, and Vecna, who is now preying on well, he's preying on all of them, but especially Max. We see him preying on Max probably more than anybody here. So yeah, I mean, and as a result, we see a lot more vulnerability with Max here, and we see very much a different side to Max's character here. She's no longer just this kind of female character that's sort of inserted into this largely male dominant group to kind of form this kind of wedge, if you like. We see there's a lot more vulnerability, there's a lot more growth with this character. She feels very much more has a titan to this group. She's so we basically see all that because of our Hellfire Club investigating all these goings on. We have another new antagonist as well in the name of Jason, who basically is this college jock. He essentially becomes convinced that Eddie is basically a Satanist, and this Hellfire Club is basically like a satanic cult, and they are responsible for all of these murders of these kids and stuff like that. So yeah, he very much becomes another antagonist, but the plot thread of that tends to be one plot thread though that does end up getting pushed out by all the other plot threads that we've got, especially as the season goes on. Like I said before, the episode 7 in particular is just exhausting. It's so action packed and it's so bang 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 bang, and it just does not stop. But then, during those last few episodes, I think it does crumble underneath its own weight a little bit. In a sense, it not in any really loud way, not in the way that it really affected my enjoyment of it. But you do see, obviously, all of these plot threads being built up throughout the season. And once you get to like episode 7 and 8, it kind of struggles to rebalance all of those. We do have certain characters or certain plot threads that are just kind of abandoned for like a couple of episodes, and like I said, the episodes are much longer here, they're much bigger, so it feels like when they come back, it feels like they've been off screen for like ever. So I think it does struggle a little bit to balance it out. But on the whole, guys, yeah, really big fan of this season. I really like during the first couple of episodes, I felt maybe a little bit frustrated by in a similar sort of way that I did with season 2, where I felt for the first couple of episodes I felt a little bit like, where are we actually going with this, and it felt like it was a little bit too much of a build. But when this season really kicks in around episode 3 and 4, boy, does it really kick in. And from then on, it is just so gun-ho, and it just does not stop. And as we are just jumping between all of these plot threads, and by the time you get to season 7, you see a lot of these plot threads kind of crescendo, like almost simultaneously. So we basically have we basically have this have one of these plot threads where Hopper is basically trying to escape his prison. We have a kind of like the sort of climax of that, and then we basically jump to kind of like the climax of 11 and the lab and her trying to escape that, and then we kind of jump into basically the climax of Hellfire Club jumping back into the Upside Down to tackle Vecna, and it all just is relentless as it kind of makes these transitions. But yeah, I would say once I really got into this season, I really got into it. Like I said, I found it absolutely exhausting. But yeah, just the sheer grand scale of this, the overall just darker tone. There's nothing really I can criticize this show for on a technical standpoint, apart from, like I said, maybe in this last 2 to 3 episodes where it does kind of like struggle to maybe balance a lot of the plot threads that it's been setting up. But I mean, on the whole, like the only thing like that I can sort of like mark this down on very subjective stuff where there is a part of me that does kind of miss just having these kind of kids as his kind of like centerpiece. But yeah, that's just me. I think that, like I said, we get a lot of surrealist horror in this, especially with like obviously Vecna and how he preys on, and we get very much like kind of like Hellraiser, especially Hellraiser 2 throwbacks and Nightmare on Elm Street throwbacks in terms of that kind of surrealism and how Vecna basically preys on his victims. And I think but when you get a season long version of that, it does get a little bit jarring, just for me personally. Maybe, like I said, that was just again a very subjective thing. I think there's things where people will love that, but yeah, just for me, it did get a little bit jarring, especially when you mix it in with a season that has so many other different plot threads and is jumping up and about. It does seem a little bit, it does tend to get a little bit convoluted maybe for my liking. But yeah, like I said, I'm just nitpicking on very subjective little, this is just basically down to just kind of like preferring one flavour of ice cream to another. Do you know what I mean? There's no like right or wrong. It just depends on, I prefer this flavour to that flavour, you know what I mean? But yeah, on the whole, guys, I really enjoyed this season. Like I said, when it got going, I got really engrossed into this season. So yeah, just you can see what season 5 brings now, which I'm about to start off. So I'll be dropping my thoughts on that pretty soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your thoughts of this season were. Yeah, until next time, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.